The younger you are, the more you have at stake in a set of decisions that are about to be made. We need young people to step up, mobilize, and push Washington in the right direction.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mayor.
Thanks for having me through.
Absolutely. What are the 3 things that you want to commit to women that you will do as president that they can then hold you accountable for?
Well, first of all, economic empowerment. And again, we've got to deal with the gender pay gap that has many different sources, and all of those need to be attacked. One of them is enforcement on direct gender pay discrimination, but we also know it has to do with access to different positions. It has to do with workplace harassment, which often leads to women leaving the workforce. Another area that I think is very important is political empowerment, and so I've committed that my cabinet will be at least 50% women, especially areas like the military and the Veterans Administration, where we've got to do a better job serving women. That will happen when we have women in more leadership roles. And then it's critically important to support and defend a woman's right to choose and access reproductive health.
What was your starstruck moment on the campaign trail?
It happens to be John Lewis. We were campaigning in Atlanta. We got word that he wanted to swing by where we were and say hello, and it was just one of the great honors of this whole thing to have the chance to spend some time with him.
Yeah. The topic that comes up everywhere from women is, of course, the fact that we don't have affordable childcare. What would you do to address that?
So we absolutely need to establish paid family leave. This is one of the main drivers of a gender pay gap. But then you meet women who either are forced to leave the workforce because they can't get affordable childcare, or I meet some who are working in order to be able to afford their childcare, in order to be able to continue working. There's no way to get ahead. And it's why we need a federal intervention.
If you could have dinner with one living woman who inspires you, who would it be and why?
Well, I would definitely go with RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Somebody who shaped the rights of so many in this country, a path-breaking woman. And I've got to think it would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah. How does your identity shape your presidential campaign?
I'm running to be a president for everybody, and part of that is drawing on my own identity. And because I'm gay, I've seen my rights come up for debate, and I've seen my rights expanded because of the activism, not just of people like me, whose shoulders I stand on to even be able to be here, but people nothing like me, who are allies. And so I think about that when I think about other parts of my identity that are privileged, being male, being white, and recognizing that I have got to make myself useful to those who have been on the excluded side of those equations.
What's your favorite binge-worthy show?
So right now I'm getting into the new Star Trek series, Picard. I was a real Next Generation follower when I was growing up, and I love that we've come full circle. Definitely one of my few kind of non-work things is catching up on TV a little bit every now and then.
Sexual assault and violence against women is so widespread in this country. What do you believe you could do as president to really address this crisis?
Well, this is another example of an issue that requires federal leadership. That's why I'm proposing that we double the resources available to the EEO, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. When it comes to violence, we've got to recognize the different forms that violence takes. That's why we've got to be ready to disarm domestic abusers. There is a crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. We got to recognize in the military a continued crisis of sexual assault, and that's why we've got to change the way that these cases are handled. There's a crisis of violence against transgender women, and in particular Black transgender women. It has to be named, it has to be confronted. We need the legal as well as enforcement tools to act on it.
What's your favorite constitutional amendment and why?
It's going to sound like I'm working the refs here, but I would name one that hasn't passed, which is the ERA. We're very proud in Indiana that Birch Bayh, who is the senator from my state, was pushing this in addition to a number of other amendments back when we remembered how to do this. You know, now when I talk about constitutional amendments, people, I think, look at me funny, like this is something that only happened in the past.
Right.
We should not be afraid to use this tool. We're going to need it to deal with Citizens United and get money out of politics.
So, we have a ton of first-time voters, as you know. What would be some advice you would give to your 18-year-old self?
Well, my 18-year-old self didn't really know where he was going to fit in the world. You know, was beginning to come to terms with the fact that I was different, but didn't really understand or wouldn't admit what that meant. So the biggest thing I would say is hold on tight and get involved and don't be afraid. I never would have guessed that my future would lead me to this place.
There are millions of people who haven't made up their mind yet in this race. Why should they elect you the next president of the United States?
For those of us around the country who maybe don't see where we fit if the only options are revolution or status quo, I'm offering something else. The kind of change that we need as a country, big, meaningful, bold, progressive change, but also a way to do it, built on a sense of belonging, of empowerment for everybody.
Women are the majority of this country. We're the majority of voters, and we have the chance to change the direction of America. So the most important thing is get involved and go vote.